Good morning, dear students. Let's continue with the next part of multi-threading, and let's have a look at the agenda for today's class. We shall begin with main thread, and then we shall discuss what are thread priorities. Then we'll see how the life cycle of thread works, what is the life cycle of thread, and how to create threads. To create threads, actually we have two different ways. One is using a thread class, and even we can create threads using the runnable interface. We shall see what is the benefit of using the runnable interface and which method is recommended whenever you want to create a thread. And then we shall also discuss about synchronization, and there are some methods like isAlive method and join methods. So along with all these theoretical concepts, we shall also see how the program for these, we will demonstrate the concepts with suitable programs. So when a Java program starts up, by default, one thread begins running immediately, and this thread is called the main thread of your program. The importance of main thread is, it is the thread from which other child threads will be started, and often it must be the last thread to finish execution because it performs various shutdown actions. Although the main thread is created automatically when your program is started, it can be controlled through a thread object. We can do that by obtaining a reference to it by calling the method current thread. Current thread is the public static member of thread. So this is the current thread, and let's see what is the general form of this. This method returns a reference to the thread in which it is called. Once you have a reference to the main thread, you can control it just like any other thread. So let's have a look at an example to see how to control a main thread. So here is an example. In this program, a reference to the current thread, the main thread in this case, is obtained by calling current thread, and this reference is stored in the local variable. So you can see that it is stored in a local variable. Next, the program displays information about the thread. The program then calls setName to change the internal name of the thread. So setName is used to change the name, to set a new name. Information about the thread is then redisplayed. Next, a loop counts down from 5, pausing 1 second between each line. So whenever we use this sleep method, it will pause for so much of time. So wherever we want some delay to be introduced, whenever in our program a situation occurs wherein we want to introduce a little delay in that, we can do that using this sleep method. And the next is, here we have the catch clause. So the argument to sleep specifies the delay period in milliseconds, and notice that the try catch block around this loop. The sleep method in thread might throw an interrupted exception. This would happen if some other thread wanted to interrupt this sleeping one. So this example just prints a message if it gets interrupted. So that's what we have written in the catch block. So catch block says main thread interrupted. In a real program, you would need to handle this differently. So let's see the output. Here is the output generated by this program, and notice the output produced when t is used as an argument to println. So this gets displayed in order. That is the name of the thread, its priority, and the name of its group. So here the name of the thread is my thread and the priority is 5 and name of its group is main. By default the name of the main thread is main only. So only you are getting to see that here it is displaying it as main. So if nothing is set, by default it will take the name as main. Its priority is 5, which is a default value again, and main is also the name of the group of threads to which this thread belongs. So what is a thread group? A thread group is a data structure that controls the state of a collection of threads as a whole. After the name of the thread is changed, T is again output. This time the new name of the thread is displayed. Now let's look more closely at the methods defined by thread that are used in the program. So in the previous slide we have seen that we use the sleep method. The sleep method causes the thread from which it is called to suspend execution for the specified period of milliseconds. And this is its general form. The number of milliseconds to suspend is specified in milliseconds. So this method may throw an interrupted exception. So we have seen that in the previous example, we wrote a catch block if there is some interruption happens during this sleep method call. The sleep method also has one more form that allows you to specify the period in terms of milliseconds and nanoseconds. So this is the second form wherein you can see that the parameters can be sent in terms of milliseconds and nanoseconds. So either you can use this form and this form as per the requirement. As we saw in the preceding program, you can set the name of a thread by using set name. So we used a set name method to rename the thread, and you can obtain the name of the thread by calling the getName method. So if we go back to this previous one, you can see that here we have used this set name method. So these methods are members of the thread class, and now let's see how to declare them. So here thread name specifies the name of the thread. Okay, now you have enough information, you know what is thread and what is multi-thread. Now let's understand how a single thread works. So this is the life cycle of a thread. A thread has specific time span to finish its task, and that time span is called as life cycle of that thread. Within a life cycle of a thread span, a thread has several phases, or we can call them as several states. During life cycle of a thread may change one phase or state to another phase or state. The java.lang.thread class contains a static state enum which defines its potential states or phases. And in Java, to get the current state of the thread, we can use thread.getState method to get the current state of the thread. And that has the following values. So here you can see that a newly created thread that has not yet started the execution, and here is an example for this. And runnable is either running or ready for execution, but it is waiting for resource allocation. Next, blocked, this is waiting to acquire a monitor lock to enter or re-enter a synchronized block or method. Next is waiting state. So in waiting state, it is waiting for some other thread to perform a particular action without any time limit. And then we have timed waiting. This is waiting for some other thread to perform a specific action for a specified period. So look at the difference between waiting and timed waiting. So timed waiting will wait for a specified period, whereas waiting will be waiting for some other thread to perform a particular action without any time limit there. And then we have terminated. That is, it has completed its execution. So note that every thread in Java is created and controlled by the thread class. The Java program can have many threads, and these threads can run concurrently, either asynchronously or synchronously. In Java, a thread can be implemented using a thread class or using the runnable interface. So here is one method that we have shown. The easiest way to create a thread is to create a class that implements the runnable interface. To implement runnable, a class needs only implement a single method called run method. And inside run, you will define the code that constitutes the new thread. So a very important point to note here is run can call other methods, use other classes, and even declare variables, just like the main thread can do. Whatever main thread can do, this run can also do. What is the difference? The only difference is that run establishes the entry point for another concurrent thread of execution within your program. And this thread will end when run returns. So after you create a class that implements runnable, you will instantiate an object of type thread from within that class. So here the constructor, it shows thread, and the parameters are runnable, thread object, string, thread name. In this constructor, thread object, that is thread OB, is an instance of a class that implements the runnable interface. So this defines where execution of the thread will begin, and the name of the new thread is specified by thread name, which is of type string. So after the new thread is created, it will not start running until you call its start method, which is declared within thread. In a sense, start executes a call to run. The start method is shown here. You can see it on the screen. So let's go through an example that creates a new thread and starts it running. So here is an example. Inside new threads constructor, a new thread object is created by the statement, that is t equals to new thread this demo thread. So passing this as the first argument indicates that you want the new thread to call the run method on this object. And next, start is called. So start will start. It starts the thread of execution beginning at the run method. So this causes the child thread for loop to begin. Now after calling start, new threads constructor returns to main method. When the main thread resumes, it enters its for loop. So here is the catch block, and then both threads continue running, sharing the CPU until their loops finish. So this is the output produced by this program. And note that your output may vary based on processor speed and task load. As mentioned earlier, in a multi-threaded program, often the main thread must be the last thread to finish running, isn't it? In fact, for some older JVMs, if the main thread finishes before a child thread has completed, then the Java runtime system may hang. So the preceding program ensures that the main thread finishes last, because the main thread sleeps for 1000 milliseconds between iterations, but the child thread sleeps for only 500 milliseconds. So this causes the child thread to terminate earlier than the main thread. So shortly you will see a better way to wait for a thread to finish. So now let's see the second way to create a thread by extending thread class. So on the screen you can see that here in this method the extending class must override the run method, which is the entry point for the new thread. So new thread extends thread. Then it must also call start to begin execution of the new thread. So this program generates the same output as the preceding version. We saw that the child thread is created by instantiating an object of new thread, which is derived from thread, and we notice that there is call to super inside new thread. So this involves the thread constructor. Well, now the next is which approach to use. This, whether to go for runnable or thread. At this point, you must be wondering why Java has two ways to create threads and which approach is better, isn't it? So whenever we want to create a thread, so it may be confusing whether to use a thread class or whether to go for a runnable interface. So the answer to these questions turn on the same point. The thread class defines several methods that can be overridden by a derived class. Now of these methods, the only one that must be overridden is the run method. This is of course the same method required when you implement runnable. So many Java programmers feel that classes should be extended only when they are being enhanced or modified in some way. So if you will not be overriding any of thread's other methods, it is probably best simply to implement runnable. And this is up to you, of course. So that's your choice. Well, now so far you have been using only two threads, the main thread and there was one child thread. However, when your program can generate as many threads as it needs, for example, this program creates three child threads. Wait for, you can just have a look at this. We have three threads getting created over here. So far we had seen only the main method and the child method. But this time you can see that we are trying to create three threads, that is 1, 2 and 3. So the output for this program would be, you can see that once started, all three child threads share this APO. Notice the call to sleep method. We have used this sleep method over here. Here we have given 10,000 as the value, right? That is in the main. So this causes the main thread to sleep for how many seconds? 10 seconds, and ensures that it will finish last. Okay, next we shall discuss two important methods. So here we have two important methods to be discussed. One is alive and join methods. So sometimes one thread needs to know when other thread is terminating. See, when we have multiple threads, like in the previous program, we created three child threads. So if at all a thread wants to know when the other thread is going to terminate, so how to do that? So there is a method called as isAlive. The isAlive method returns true if the thread upon which it is called is still running, otherwise it returns false. What about join? Join method is used more commonly than isAlive, and join method waits until the thread on which it is called terminates. And using join method, we tell our thread to wait until the specified thread completes its execution. So there are overloaded versions of join method which allows us to specify time for which you want to wait for a specified thread to terminate. And as mentioned earlier, often you will want the main thread to finish last. So this we have already discussed. We always want the main thread to terminate after all the child threads have completed their execution. Therefore, we can use this join method to ensure that all the threads created by the program has been terminated before the execution of the main thread. So let's take an example and see how isAlive method works. Okay, so here is our program. You can see that we have used the run method, and then since there is a sleep method, it may throw an interrupted exception that we are handling using the catch block. And then in the main method, you can see that we have created T1 and T2 objects of main thread, and then we are starting these two threads, that is T1 and T2, and then here we are calling is alive methods using both objects T1 and T2. So let's see what would be the output of this. Okay, this is the output R1, true, true, R1, R2, R2. Hope the concept is clear now. Now, let's examine an example of thread without join method. So here in this program, we have two threads, T1 and T2 getting created. T1 starts first, and after printing R1 on console thread, T1 goes to sleep for 500 milliseconds. At the same time, thread T2 will start its process, and it prints R1 on the console and then go into sleep for 500 milliseconds. Thread T1 will wake up from sleep and print R2 on the console. Similarly, thread T2 will wake up from sleep and print R2 on the console. So you will get output something like R1, R1, R2, R2. So here is the output. So you can see that we have got output as R1, R1, R2, R2. Right. So this is an example of thread without join. Now let's see an example of thread with join method. So in this program, join method on thread T1 ensures that T1 finishes its process before thread T2 starts. So the output is R1, R2, R1, R2, right? So now what if in this program we specify time while using join with T1, right? So let's see this. We have specified the time. This time initially T1 will execute for 1.5 seconds, and after which T2 will join it. Fine. Next, we will discuss about thread priorities. So in a multi-threaded environment, thread scheduler assigns processor to a thread based on priority of thread. Means whenever we create a thread in Java, it always has some priority assigned to it. So priority can either be given by JVM while creating the thread, or it can be given by a programmer explicitly. The accepted value of priority for a thread is in the range of say 1 to 10. And there are 3 static variables defined in thread class for priority. They are min priority, normal priority, and max priority. So min priority, this is the minimum priority that a thread can have, and the value for this is 1. And the normal priority is the default priority of a thread if do not explicitly define that, and the value for the normal priority is 15. And we have max priority, and this is the maximum priority of a thread, and value for this is 10. That means it is ranging between 1 to 10. So minimum by default it is 1, maximum is 10, and the normal is 5. And see that these priorities are defined as static final variables within thread. And you can obtain the current priority setting by calling the get priority method of thread. So here you can see that we are using the get priority. So let's see an example of get priority and also set. So this Java program demonstrates get priority and set priority. Alright. So here we have used get priority. So here T1 by default it is 5, T2 is also default is 5, T3 is also default is 5. Now if you want to change the priority, want to set a new priority, and I mentioned that it has to be in the range of 1 to 10. To set the priority we can use set priority method. Here we are assigning the priority of 2 to T1, 5 is set for T2 and 8 is set for T3. What if we set a priority, let's say 21. Here you can see that we have written it as T3 dot set priority of 21. Definitely it will throw an exception, that is illegal argument exception. What is the reason? It has to be in the range of 1 to 10. So this is the next part of the program. Here again you can see that we have used get priority method, get name method, right? So let's see the output. So here is the output. Well, so here we can note that thread with highest priority will get execution chance prior to other threads, isn't it? Suppose there are 3 threads T1, T2, T3 with priorities 4, 6 and 1 respectively. So thread T2 will execute first based on the maximum priority 6, isn't it? So when we have 4, 6 and 1, suppose this is set for T1, T2, T3. So which is the maximum priority? This. And after that T1 will execute and then T3, because T1's priority is set to 4 and T3's priority is set to 1. So default priority for main thread is always 5. It can be changed later. Default priority for all other threads, that depends on the priority of the parent thread. So now let's examine a program that demonstrates how a child thread gets the same priority as parent. Here you can observe that the main thread's priority is 6 and T1 thread is child of main thread. So T1 thread will also have priority 6, isn't it? Why we have the priority value of main thread as 6? The reason is we have used a method, set priority method, and we have passed an argument 6. So the main thread's priority is 6 now. Otherwise by default it will have 5. And then because of that T1 thread is also going to have the priority as 6, because T1 is the child of the main thread, right? So let's look at the output of this. So output, you can observe that the main thread priority is 6 and also T1 thread priority is 6. So, some points to remember here are, if two threads have same priority, then we can't expect which thread will execute first, isn't it? So, when we have T1 priority is 6 and say T2 priority is also 6. So, which one gets executed? How do we know that? Because both have the same priority. So, it depends on the thread scheduler's algorithm, what type of algorithm, whether it is round robin or first come, first served. So, it is based on that. And if we are using thread priority for thread scheduling, then we should always keep in mind that underlying platform should provide support for scheduling based on thread priority, isn't it? Well, next we will start with a very interesting concept related to multi-threading. Yes, that is synchronization. So far we have been discussing about multi-threaded programs, and when we have multi-threaded programs, at some point of time we may come to a situation where multiple threads try to access the same resources and finally produce erroneous and unforeseen results, right? So, it is necessary to make that only one thread can access the resource at a given point of time. So, for example, the multiple threads attempt to write within an equivalent file. This may corrupt the data, since one of the threads can overwrite the data, or when a thread is opening the same file at the same time, another thread might be closing the same file. So, this situation might happen, right? So, there is a need to synchronize the action of multiple threads. So, this can be implemented using the concept called monitors. Each object in Java is associated with a monitor which a thread can lock or unlock, and only one thread at a time may hold a lock on a monitor. Java programming language provides a very handy way of creating threads and synchronizing their tasks by using the synchronized blocks. So, it also keeps the shared resources within this particular block. The synchronized blocks in Java are marked with the synchronized keyword, and this block in Java is synchronized on some object. All blocks that are synchronized on the same object can only have one thread executing inside them at a time, and all other threads which are attempting to enter the synchronized block are blocked until the thread inside the synchronized block exits the block. So, actually you can synchronize your code in either of two ways. Both involve the use of the synchronized. First, let's see how to do this using a synchronization. Is easy in Java because all objects have their own implicit monitor associated with them, and to enter any object's monitor, you need to just call a method that has been modified with the synchronized keyword. While a thread is inside a synchronized method, all other threads that try to call it or any other synchronized method on the same instance have to wait to exit the monitor and relinquish control of the object to the next waiting thread, the owner of the monitor simply returns from the synchronized method. So to understand the need for synchronization, let's begin with a simple example that does not use it but it should have used. So this program is not synchronized, and this program has three simple classes. The first one is call me method, call me class. It has a single method named call method, right? And the call method takes a string parameter called message, MSG. So this method tries to print the message string inside of square brackets. So the interesting thing to notice is that after call prints the opening bracket and the message string, it calls thread.sleep, which pauses the current thread for 1 second. We have seen that we are passing 1000 over here, isn't it? 1000 is a parameter which pauses current thread for 1 second. And as you can see, by calling sleep, the call method allows execution to switch to another thread. So this results in the mixed up output of 3 message strings. So in this program, nothing exists to stop all 3 threads from calling the same method on the same object at the same time, right? So this is known as a race condition because the 3 threads are racing each other to complete the method. So this example used sleep to make the effects repeatable and obvious. In most situations, a race condition is more less predictable because you can't be sure when the context switch will occur, right? So this can cause a program to run right one time and wrong the next. To fix this preceding program, you must serialize access to the call method. That is, you must restrict its access to only one thread at a time. So to do this, you simply need to precede calls definition with a keyword synchronized. So let's see how we can do this. So here you can observe that this prevents other threads from entering call while another thread is using it. After synchronized has been added to call, the output will be something like this, right? So any time that you have a method or group of methods that manipulates the internal state of an object in a multi-threaded situation, you should use the synchronized keyword. That is to guard the state from race conditions. So remember, once a thread enters any synchronized method on an instance, no other thread can enter any other synchronized method on the same instance. However, non-synchronized methods on that instance will continue to be callable. So next we shall talk about synchronization statement. So we have seen that how we can create synchronized methods within classes, and we found that it is an easy and effective means of achieving synchronization. But that will not work for all cases. To understand why it is so, let's consider an example. Imagine that you want to synchronize access to objects of a class that was not designed for multi-threaded access. That is, the class does not use synchronized methods. Further, this class was not created by you but by a third party, and you do not have any access to the source code, right? Thus, you can't add synchronized to the appropriate methods within the class. So how can access to an object of this class be synchronized now? Fortunately, the solution to this problem is quite easy. You simply put calls to the methods defined by this class inside a synchronized block. So let's say an alternative version of this preceding example using a synchronized block within the run method. So here you can observe that the call method is not modified by synchronized. So let's have a look at the program and it will be clear to you. So instead, a synchronized statement is used inside the caller's run method. This causes the same correct output as the preceding example because each thread waits for the prior one to finish before proceeding. Okay. Next we have in the slide is inter-thread communication. We have seen so far that all the examples unconditionally blocked other threads from asynchronous access to certain methods. This use of the implicit monitors in Java object is powerful, but you can achieve a more higher level of control through intra-process communication. So as discussed earlier, multi-threading replaces event loop programming by dividing your task into discrete logical units, right? So threads also provide a secondary benefit. They do away with polling. Polling is usually implemented by a loop that is used to check some condition repeatedly. So once the condition is true, appropriate action is taken. So this wastes CPU time. So for example, consider the classic queuing problem where one thread is producing some data and other is consuming it, right? So we have two threads, one is producing some data and other one is consuming it. So to make the problem more interesting, suppose that the producer has to wait until the consumer finished before it generates more data, right? So this is the classic example. So in a polling system, the consumer would waste many CPU cycles while it waited for the producer to produce. Once the producer was finished, it would start polling, wasting more CPU cycles, waiting for the consumer to finish, and so on. So clearly this situation is undesirable, isn't it? So to avoid polling, Java includes an elegant inter-process communication mechanism via the methods called as wait, notify and notify all methods. So these methods we shall discuss in the next lecture. So to summarize what we discussed in today's class is what is main thread and what are the thread priorities. So we started with main thread. We always want the main thread to complete its task at the last, and it should wait till all other child threads complete their work. And then we have seen what are the different thread priorities. We have max priority, mean priority and a normal priority, and we have seen that it ranges between 1 to 10, and we can even set and get the priorities using the methods get priority and set priority. Then we saw the life cycle of a thread, and we saw how to create threads using two different approaches, using by extending a thread class, or we can even do that using by implementing the runnable interface. We have seen the advantages of both the methods, and then we saw why do we require synchronization when we have multiple threads running, how to do that, right? So next class, uh, the necessity of synchronization we have discussed, and next class we should start with these methods wait, notify and notify all, and we'll see some of the programs also which can demonstrate the benefits of using these methods. So that's all for today's lecture. Keep practicing the programs that we discussed in today's lecture. So next class we shall begin with this. So that would be the last part of multi-threading chapter. Thank you. Take care.